YouTube. So just to let everybody know that, I think that's very important to let people know. So I'm going to start the launch. So I think by looking at some faces, I would know mostly everybody, but for people that don't know me, my name is Tessa Collins. I work on the Violence Against Women programme within Pavee Point. So I work in Pavee Point Traveller and Roma Centre. Just for people who doesn't know Pavee Point will work a lot in solidarity with the settled community and other communities, and basically just building awareness about travellers and Roma living in Ireland, but also looking for human rights for travellers and Roma. So my background has been working in Pavee Point for nearly over 25 years. I have a specific area working in the area of violence against women. And within our programme, it's not there just because it's more prevalent within the community, because a lot of people think that it is, and it's part of our culture, domestic violence. This is not the case. The reason why the programme is there is to build awareness of domestic and sexual violence within our community by travellers, for travellers, but it's also to build and close gaps with services, that traveller women and Roma women living in Ireland are getting the same access to services and the same outcomes. So we're trying to close the gaps, and we work well with services. And then also then a part of my work is to work at a policy level and to make changes at a government level, as I would call it, and that traveller and Roma women's voices are heard. So I would sit on strategies such as the National Women's Strategies for Women and Girls and the National Strategy on Gender-Based Violence. So that's a little bit about the work that we do within Pavee Point. But also, I think it's important to say why we're here this morning. Obviously, we're here for a launch, and we're here for a launch of a Bar and Safety Order leaflet, but also an animation. And why are we doing this? So this is a leaflet that is designed for travellers to give them and share information about the legal service, and is a different option. So you have your leaflet, but you also have your animation. And it's a way of sharing clear and simple information. But during the morning, this will be explored more, but it'll also be explored more by our guest speakers as well, who knows actually what is going on out on the ground. But we don't want to give Pavee Point all the praise for this work. We've also done it in partnership with our 4 traveller women awareness workers, which one who is Anne Doonan, who is based in Wicklow Traveller Group. We also have Eileen Burke, who is based in the Traveller Visibility Group in Cork. We also have Megan Berry, who is based in St. Catherine's, Carlow. And then we also have, as I would call her, our own Bridget Collins, who is based on the Violence Against Women programme, who put in a lot of effort into the design of this, and they would know what is actually going on out on the ground for traveller women. But we also have to thank TUSLA, who actually funded their position for this work to be done as well. So we thank TUSLA, the Child and Family Agency, but then we also have to thank who resourced and who gave us the funding for this leaflet, so which was the Irish Human Rights Equality Commission, who funded this project. But then we also, again, there's one more people I make sure I have to thank as well, is also that we worked alongside services in the design of this project, and also to say that we're putting in clear, precise information. So the information within the leaflet and the animation is correct. So firstly, I would like to thank the Garda Siochana, Garda National Protective Service Bureau, who we worked alongside. We worked alongside Safe Ireland, Women's Aid, the Legal Aid Board, court services, the free legal advice centres, and lastly, the Garda Ombudsman. So I just think it's important to acknowledge them as well. And as I said, the important is that any woman living here in Ireland in a domestic violence situation, no matter what walks your life you're from, that help is there and help is provided and advice is clear and understandable. And this is the reason why we're doing this work. And especially that it's coming from traveller women, and traveller women are involved in the design of this. We're traveller women, we know our issues and our concerns, and we live that life. So just to say that as well. I just want to go quickly as well through a little bit of housekeeping, if that's okay. So I think it's just important, due to the nature of Zoom, you can have hiccups and connections So I think until the end of the session, when we have the questions and answers, it's good that people keep themselves on mute. Also, there is a chat box available if people want to ask a question and that people are able to use it. Feel free to put in any questions there. I suppose it's hard, but just the nature of me as a facilitator this morning, it's good if people can keep their mobile phones out of the way, and if they need to answer a call, maybe to knock off the camera so it doesn't disturb me as a facilitator. It can throw me off a little bit. Also, as I said, we have recorded the launch, and then the important part is that there is hashtags here this morning. So there's hashtag Traveller Women and hashtag Access to Justice. So we ask people who's on Twitter and so on to tweet away, and that would be very grateful. So I think this morning, for now, you might be getting fed up of listening to my voice. So I think this is a good opportunity that I invite one of our guest speakers. We have 3 guest speakers here this morning. We have Eileen Burke, we have Eileen Flynn, but we also have Daniel Beckett. So firstly, I'm going to just give a quick bio to our first guest speaker, who is Eileen. And I'm just going to introduce Eileen, and then I will give Eileen the floor to give a little bit of a speech. So is everybody clear so far what's going on? Are they happy? Yeah. So I'm just going to do Eileen Burke's bio. So Eileen Burke is a traveller woman, an activist for her community for over 30 years. She worked as a primary healthcare worker in the past and is now a traveller women awareness worker in Traveller Visibility Group in Cork. She, as I said, she works with other 4 workers, and it's funded by TUSLA. Eileen works with her community at local and works with local services in the area of domestic and sexual gender-based violence. So I think now I'll hand you over to Eileen. Have we got Eileen? Are we having trouble?
Eileen, you're just on mute.
That's what it is.
I think I was put on mute, was I? I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Eileen. You're still on mute, Eileen. You're still on mute. Yeah, you're off.
I just apologise. I'm having a lot of technical issues with my internet. So I don't know what's going on with it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, look, we said we're going to allow for hiccups. We said
okay.
that. So okay. Go ahead, Eileen.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Tessa. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking part in this morning's launch. As Tessa said, my name is Eileen Burke, and I want to talk about the leaflet and the animation video and how they came about. Us as Traveller Women's Awareness Workers, we came together collectively to voice our worries about there not being enough information or awareness in our community about barring and safety orders in a way that women could understand it. We wanted to let women know how they can protect themselves and what steps they need to take when getting protection. We Traveller Women's Awareness Workers identified the need for these materials for our community. And we wanted this resource to be made in a way that women in our community would understand and identify with. Some of the positive things that have come out of our work and the pilot program is that Traveller women are coming to look for support and advice about domestic and sexual violence. It is important that Traveller women have the correct information about how to get a barring order and a safety order and how to use them. Women need to understand the difference between the court orders. What a woman has to go through to get a court order, it's like a minefield. And understand how to get through it and to make sure that she has proper protection so she can protect herself and her family. It can be confusing for any woman, but you can imagine what it's like for a Traveller woman. Literacy levels, jargon words can be a barrier for Traveller women to get a court order. We wanted this resource to show Traveller women exactly what to do to get a court order and how to use them. There are barriers with barren and safety orders. Women who look for court orders. Lots of women are confused with what is a safety order, what is a barren order, and what they mean. Some women might think that a temporary order is the actual order and she might not show up to court on the court date. When a traveller woman has an order, she doesn't always know how to use it. And sometimes, if she gets a barren order, it might still be on the site in the next bay or a few bays further down. So she still has to sometimes see him, and more than likely he will still be close by her. There are also barriers with Gardaí. There is a lack of trust in the Gardaí and fear of Gardaí. Traveller women would echo our concerns about calling the Gardaí because of Tusla and a fear of children being taken away and being taken into care. This is a major barrier for traveller women to call the Gardaí. Not only is this a barrier, but there is a fear that if Gardaí are called out, the woman could get the blame for drawing negative attention to the community. Also, we know of many women who have had a barring or a safety order, but when she calls the Gardaí, they don't act or arrest the perpetrator. Legal aid. It is important for women to know that she should have a solicitor representing her in court when she is looking for protection. It is also important for her to contact legal aid to see if she can get support with paying for legal fees. Many traveller women don't know about this, and it is important for women to have this information. Many women also don't know that you can appeal the court decision if she isn't given an order by the judge, or that you can make a complaint about Gardaí if you don't get the protection you need. Any information and materials needs to be made accessible to women from different cultural backgrounds. It is also important for traveller organisations across the country to link in with women in their community, to give them the information they need, and to encourage traveller women to come forward. One of the positive things since I started this role is that traveller women have been reaching out, looking for information and support. It has been a great experience for me as a traveller woman that this resource leaflet and video was done by travellers for travellers. More work needs to be done with traveller women and making sure that women can access information and protection about domestic and sexual violence. Again, I would like to thank you all for coming to the launch this morning, and thank you for listening. I'll pass you back over to my colleague now, Tessa.
Thank you, Eileen, for a passionate input there this morning, and how you highlighted, because you're the first hand out on the ground and you're a traveller woman yourself, so you understand the barriers and issues that traveller women are facing, going to the service, but all through, as you said yourself, like a minefield, accessing the legal system. But we don't be too negative here this morning and keep speaking about negativity. We also want to speak a little bit about being positive. And the positive part is that your role as a traveller women awareness worker and this leaflet and this resource will be able to share clear and precise information to our community, but also maybe to other communities. So I thank you for giving us that input there this morning. So I think now we can move on to our second guest speaker, whose name is Garda Daniel Beckett, who has over 15 years experience in the Garda Siochana, working mainly in Store Street area in a number of roles before joining Domestic Abuse Intervention and Policy Unit in Harcourt Square in March of last year. Since that time, he has seen the impact of domestic abuse, and the impact in the last year particularly has on many vulnerable victims. So I'll hand you now over to Daniel, who's also going to give an input.
Thanks for that, Tessa. Hello, everyone, and I'm very happy to be here speaking to you guys. Again, my name is Dan Beckett. I'm a detective attached to the National Domestic Abuse Unit in Harcourt Square. So today I'm going to talk about domestic abuse orders, what happens when Gardaí are called to a domestic incident. I'm going to give a quick run through coercive control and the law around it, and then some challenges that may be faced when dealing with Gardaí. Okay, there are a number of domestic abuse orders that can be obtained by victims. Mainly these orders are to protect victims of abuse, and if they are breached, they give Gardaí a power of arrest and afford protection to the person they are for. The people who can apply for these orders are wives or ex-wives and husbands or ex-husbands, partners or ex-partners, people who have children together, people who have been dating, and the important thing is they don't have to have been living together, and if you have a violent adult child. When a person wants to apply for an order, they have to go to the family law court and meet a clerk and then complete some application forms and go before a judge. The judge then grants an interim order, such as a protection order, or if the abuse is serious enough and the abuser is required to be out of the home, an interim barring order. Then, after this, a hearing date is set and a permanent order, such as a safety order or barring order, may be granted. And important as well that all orders protect the persons who apply for them and also any of their children, excuse me, who are under 18. So when an order is granted, there are conditions that the abuser must abide by. And if he breaches these conditions, then there is a power of arrest for Gardaí. Gardaí can arrest the person. So they must not use or threaten to use violence or behave in any way that puts the person who the order is for or their children in fear. If the abuser is not living with the person who applied for the order, it prevents them from attending the place, coming to the place where they live, or even just watching it and causing distress to the person who the order is for. And the third part is very important. It prevents the abuser from following the person or communicating, and this includes by electronic means. So what I mean is they're not allowed to send texts, use WhatsApp, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever other social media platform is available. The important part of this is that the messages or the communication does not have to be abusive in nature. It just has to be sent. And if it's sent in breach of the order, the person can be arrested. Now, there are conditions that a judge may put onto an order if there's access issues regarding children, but that will be very clearly stated in the order. Barring orders have an extra stipulation that the abuser must leave the home that they are living in with the person who applies from it, and then it bans them from entering the home until the order expires. So when a protection order expires, when a safety order is granted, and then when an interim barring order, that expires when the full barring order is granted. When Gardaí are called, okay, Gardaí should be called even if there are no domestic orders in place. We would encourage that, and we would hope that anybody who's suffering abuse in the home would feel secure enough to call us. So Gardaí will ask what has happened before the call was made, and if there's an order in place and there is a breach of that order, well then the abuser or the offender should be arrested and will be arrested. And if the abuser has left, they will then be arrested at the earliest possible opportunity. If a person has an order, then any time an abuser assaults, threatens, or their behavior scares that person or their children, or if an abuser follows the person who the order is for, or turns up outside their home, and even if they don't do anything outside their home, it's a breach of the order. And if abuser contacts an applicant against the conditions of an order, so I mean that if the judge hasn't stated that it's okay to contact in a particular time or in a particular way, and namely about access for children, and again, I really have to stress that these messages do not have to be abusive, then we can report to Gardaí, and these are all breaches of an order. If there's no order in place and there's evidence of another crime, such as damaging property within the home belonging to somebody else, or if they're out in the street causing a public order offence, but then that person can be arrested. When Gardaí attend any domestic abuse incident, they should take details of what happened, they should listen to a victim, and they should reassure them and offer advice about orders, and also provide information about domestic abuse support groups, because these are very important and play a huge role in assisting us in helping victims. And every victim of a domestic abuse call, or any person who's called for Gardaí arising out of a domestic abuse incident, whether they have an order or not, will receive a visit from Gardaí within 1 week of the incident to ensure that they are safe, and it affords them a chance then to maybe tell Gardaí what happened, or maybe speak in a bit more confidence with Gardaí after the incident has occurred. I was going to move on to coercive control. But this is a new offence which was created under the Domestic Violence Act 2018, and it covers anything from the 1st of January 2019, okay? Coercive control only applies to current or ex-partners, so that would include marriages, but current or ex-partners. So what is it? Coercive control is all the stuff that occurs in an abusive relationship that isn't necessarily violent, and it's a pattern of behaviour. So I'm going to read through a list here now. It includes verbal abuse or psychological abuse, humiliation, threats or violence or intimidation, jealous behaviour, stalking. It can be financial abuse, sexual abuse. It can be denying a person access to medical facilities. It can be any behaviour which is controlling or coercive, any behaviour which is isolating, taking people away from their family and friends. It can be any behaviour which impacts a person's day-to-day activities and also limits their freedom to live a normal life. While there may be physical violence, there does not need to be violence for it to be coercively controlled. There's no time limit that this behaviour needs to occur, and there's no minimum time either, but the important thing is offences must happen after the 1st of January 2019 when this act became into law. The important aspect of this is that the abuser knew what they were doing and it had a serious impact on a victim's life and their ability to live that life. So when a person makes a complaint about coercive control, Garda will take a detailed statement from the victim. All evidence is gathered, then it's presented to the DPP, who makes a decision whether to charge the abuser or not. This is a relatively new offence, but it is taken with utmost seriously, and there have been a lot of high-profile convictions for coercive control in the recent media. There are Divisional Protective Services units now assigned to every division nationwide, and there are highly trained detectives within these units who are very skilled at recognising and dealing with these incidents. So again, we would encourage any woman who's dealing with these to come forward and make a complaint to Garda. Finally, I'm just going to run through some challenges which may occur when dealing with Garda. So we in the National Domestic Abuse Unit, we do acknowledge that there may be challenges when dealing with us. If you're a victim of abuse, we recognise and we understand that how difficult it can be for you to contact Garda for help. Should the level of service provided by Garda fall short of what is expected and should be delivered, there are avenues that this can be addressed. Contacting the local superintendent should be the first port of call, and in most cases, this would have a positive result. Again, if this doesn't result in a positive outcome, we would encourage people to make complaints to the Garda Ombudsman. It's only by learning what we're doing wrong that we can improve our service delivery. So again, we would encourage this. I would also say that if Garda attending a domestic abuse call do not recognise that privacy may be an issue, then don't be afraid to stand up and say it and ask to speak privately. And finally, should there be any obstacles preventing a person from completing an application form for domestic abuse order, please don't hesitate to say it to Garda. With their permission, Garda can refer a person to a local domestic support group who can and have the facilities to assist them, and also Garda can assist with them in completing this too. I hope I've covered everything in this talk, and again I would like to thank everyone for listening to me and for inviting Pavee Point for inviting us to speak together today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel, for a very comprehensive information there, speaking about the different types of orders. And even when we're listening to you speaking about the orders, you can hear how many different even types of orders there is. And within the animation and our leaflet, we speak about that also. I think that's very important. But you also brought up one very valid point, what I thought was very important to say, that a woman really doesn't need an order in place if she feels she's in a domestic violence situation or in a dangerous situation. And sometimes that can be very confusing within our community. People also think sometimes that a guard mightn't come out because you haven't got an order in place. So I think that was a very important point to bring up. And you also brought up and you talked about challenges. There has been challenges in the past and in the present between our community of the travellers and with the Garda. Days like this, we are trying to talk about these issues and concerns and trying to close the gaps, that making sure that traveller and Roma women are getting the same outcome as any other woman living in Ireland. You also brought up about speaking to the Garda Ombudsman. We speak a lot about this within our leaflet, and we're trying to encourage women, any woman for any walk of life, if they don't feel that they're getting proper help from the Garda, that they're able to report them, but also to appeal their decision, even within a bargain on safety order. So I thank you very much for giving us that input. So I think now we'll move on to the official launch of our leaflet. And I'm delighted to have an old friend here that I know from years going to meetings, and I would know her in the past as well, is the Senator Eileen Flynn, was nominated to the Siochana by our Taoiseach Micheál Martin in 2020, and is the first traveller Mink here to be served in the House of Oireachtas. Senator Flynn background is in a community development and an activist on behalf of Irish travellers and in solidarity with other ethnic minorities. She is deeply committed to the cause of women's rights, human rights and equality. So I'm going to hand you over now to Eileen, who's going to give a little bit of an input and officially launch our Barn and Safety leaflet and our animation. Over to you, Eileen.
Thanks so much, Tessa, and thanks to Pavee Point Violence Against Women's Network for inviting me here today to launch this very important campaign. And firstly, just want a little bit of the work I've been involved in raising awareness around the inequalities that traveller women face on a daily basis, which includes domestic violence. And throughout my work with the National Traveller Women's Forum, I've had the pleasure of sitting at the strategy plans for Roma and traveller women. And over a decade, I've done this work. And again, I've had a great opportunity, and a man leave actually Cork from the National Traveller Women's Forum. So I've had a great close relationship with the violence against women in Pavee Point, and having the pleasure to work with yourself and to know from the inside as well. Then it was like, oh, it's part of traveller culture. This is okay within the traveller community. Domestic violence is okay within your community. It's part of what you do, you know. And we have this ideology in our heads, the general population does, that it's all right, domestic violence within the traveller community, and that it happens more within our community than what it does in the general population, which we all know that's not the case. We all know it's not part of our culture, domestic violence, that women are, you know, suffering different forms of domestic violence, and rightly says in the leaflet, different types, sexual violence, emotional abuse, financial abuse, etc. So just to say that, you know, and it's really important that, like we point out here today, that 1 out of every 4 women in Ireland go through domestic violence, and there's been an increase of that during the pandemic. So, and that also includes traveller women, you know. And throughout my role within the National Traveller Women's Forum, trying to get women access to services in between for the length I was working with them, from 2018 to 2020, and to still nowadays that we still see it part of the traveller culture and part of traveller norms, which is not the case. Again, I really want to highlight that. So it's good to see this leaflet has been done by members of our community, by traveller women, for traveller women. And I was speaking to you this morning, Tessa, around, you know, as somebody who was pregnant just 2 years ago, and I reached out to the Pavee Point website, to the maternity services, and, you know, it explained stuff very simple in my language that I could understand. And the same this time around that I'm pregnant, it was the first website that I went back to for the relative information that spoke in the language that I feel that traveller women can understand, and me myself I could understand as a traveller woman. And this leaflet is the exact same. And what really stands out for me within this leaflet is that, you know, for many younger traveller women who go through domestic violence or are living in horrible situations, our accommodation is a little bit different. You know, like we live in trailers, and so it's good to see even the pictures of the trailer, a woman sitting at the door of the trailer, because I've seen that so many times here and the site. And traveller women, you know, we have to remember as well, like that, you know, for a lot of us, we're committed to our husbands. We married, we made a vow to our husbands, and it's very tough to get away from that situation. And it is estimated that a woman will leave a man 46 times before she'll leave him for good. just during the pandemic, a really quick experience. A very close person to myself with 6 children went to a refuge, and you know, the children are even like rejected within some services, and unfortunately, you know, you either have too many children or you've been here before, all the stereotypes that goes with that, you know. And for the woman who was very close to me, she spent 8 weeks in a refuge, and then she was forwarded and then to the homeless services, and unfortunately, due to those situations where she couldn't be homed and looked after by society in general, she ended up going back to the abuser. And we see that all of the time, because if we look at the employment rate within the traveller community, it's very difficult for women who want to leave those situations, that's not educated, that can't get a job because she's a traveller woman, you know, and her address and everything else that goes with that. So there's many different barriers when we talk about women leaving these kind of situations that we have to take into account. But this morning, I'm delighted to be able to launch this leaflet and animation, and I really genuinely believe that it speaks to the community, it speaks to the ordinary traveller woman, and it also speaks to other women as well, from as you said, Tessa, earlier, from all walks of life. And within our community, we don't accept domestic violence, and this leaflet is very clear, and it explains the different kinds of orders, like safety orders, barn orders. And again, it's important that traveller women that we meet the cultural appropriate needs of traveller women, because again, we are different, but we should be equal worth in the world and have equal rights to services and equal access to services. So again, I just want to end by saying thanks to Pavee Point, and thanks to the Violence Against Women in Pavee Point for all of their work that they've done for over the last 15 years to break down the barriers and to get access to traveller women to services, and also to the likes of the National Traveller Women's Forum as well, and all of the local organisations who's working with traveller women and who don't accept domestic violence. So thank you so much, and it gives me great pleasure to launch this leaflet, and I know that women from our community do look at Pavee Point website, because I was one of those women that looked at it for the maternity services and what it meant to be like a traveller woman being pregnant. And again, I won't go over what Detective Daniel said around the ombudsman and how we can reach out to different services and stuff. This leaflet is just extremely clear, and it speaks to traveller women, and it was done by traveller women. Now, if it's okay with people, we can have a look at the animation, and yeah, just have a look at it, and I'm delighted to launch the leaflet and the animation. Thank you.
Burden and safety orders. Domestic violence impacts women from all walks of life. It's about one person using abuse to control their partner, ex-partner, or a family member. It's about coercive control, a pattern of abuse, threats of violence to hurt and scare the victim. This controlling behaviour takes many shapes and forms. It can be physical, emotional, sexual, and financial. Domestic violence and coercive control are against the law. One way to get protection from domestic violence is by applying for a court order. There are 2 different orders you can apply for. A burden order means the abuser must stay away from the home. A safety order means the abuser doesn't have to leave the home. Or if you're not living together, the court might order them to stop watching or being close to the home. In both cases, the abuser must stop using or threatening to use violence against you or your children. The court might also order the abuser to stop following or contacting you or your children through technology. Local domestic violence services can support you with all the steps involved with getting an order. To apply for an order, go to your local district court office to fill out an application and mention any evidence you have. If you need protection right now, Tell the court clerk that you want to get a temporary order. You may be able to be heard by the judge on the same day or a few days later. If the judge thinks that your safety is at risk, they might give you a temporary order to keep you and your children protected until the court hearing. If you need protection when the district court is closed, you can contact the Garda and ask for a special sitting in the district court. It is a good idea to get a solicitor to represent you at the court hearing. And if you struggle paying for solicitors' fees, you might be able to get legal aid. You can also talk to your solicitor about having a support worker with you at the hearing or to give evidence through a video link so that you don't have to be in the same room with the abuser. On the day of the court hearing, you and the abuser will be asked to give evidence and answer questions. If the judge grants you a pardon or safety order, you will get the documentation on that day. The court will make sure your local Garda station gets the order too, but you should bring the same copy yourself to be sure. If the abuser doesn't show up in the court service will send it to them. If you are refused a pardon or safety order, you should be told why this is. If you are not happy with the decision, you can ask for this to be reviewed. Ask your solicitor about this. Breaking an order is a crime. If the abuser breaks the order, call 999 or 112 or your local Garda station. Gardaí can arrest him, and if the Gardaí don't arrest him or support you, you can make a complaint to your superintendent in your local Garda station or the Garda Ombudsman. Domestic violence services are there to listen and support you. If you're ever in immediate danger, call 999 or 112. The abuse and violence is never ever your fault.
So firstly, I'd like to thank Eileen for officially launching our animation and our leaflet. Again, listen to Eileen speak about being a traveller woman, living out on the sites, talking about barriers. But there's one thing that struck me when Eileen said it, about language and literacy levels. When she spoke about leaflets, she kind of spoke and she said it was understandable. And she says it was understandable because it was my language. So she was looking at a leaflet even when she was through her first pregnancy. She was looking at Pavee boers or Pavee mothers, and she was able to take information that she understood. And then when she was able to access other services, she probably was able to ask a question that she understood. So I think that was very important that Eileen highlighted, and a very strong speech also. Now that people have seen our animation, I suppose now you kind of listen to me a good bit, speaking in the animation, but also being the facilitator for this morning. So I think we have quite a variety in the audience. And I would like, as the panel, there's going to be the two Eileens and Dan that will probably share some of the questions from people. So now I think I'm going to hand it over to the audience. And maybe then for the audience, maybe to ask our panel maybe some questions related to what you've heard this morning, or maybe looking at the animation and so on. So I'm going to hand it over to yourselves now. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to do so.
Could I ask a question there, if you don't mind?
Yes, no problem.
Hi, my name is Aoife. I'm from Waterford Traveller CDB here in Waterford City. How are you?
Hiya, Aoife. Hiya.
Good. Just a quick question for Dan, maybe he might be able to answer it for me. Just a situation where there was a domestic violence case here and they went to the local Garda station, but they were told that they had to actually go back to the station they were from. They had travelled, they'd fled their home up the country and had come down to family members here in the city. And when they went to the city station, there was some kind of that they had to go back to their home county. I'm just wondering, is that?
Hi Eva, thanks for your question.
No worries.
I find it very hard to actually answer that without knowing true facts, and I'd be reluctant enough, but
Sure.
I would say that any Garda station in the country, irrespective from where a crime or an offence or even an incident of abuse has occurred, should be able to take that report there.
Okay.
Investigations into crimes, and I'll include the abuse as part of that crime, just to kind of put it in a bracket, would be sent back to the area where it occurred. But there's no reason, or there's no difficulty in any situation. I know I've done it myself in the past. Taking their initial report could be taken at any Garda station. I can't speak for specifics, but I hope that kind of clears it up.
That's perfect. That's lovely. Thanks so much.
Again, if there's any issues, you should be, and we would be strongly, and I know I have the back of my sergeant and inspector, to go to the local superintendent of that station in Waterford and raise your concerns there, because to be honest, abuse we're not tolerating it anymore, and there's no way that anybody should be allowed to sweep it under the carpet, including Gardaí. So and if that doesn't work, again, the ombudsman.
That's perfect. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Not at all.
Can I ask, this Magella Foley Free Alignment Mediator with the Legal Aid Board, I really like the video and I love the pictures. I can't think, it makes it really clear and easy, and people who are going through looking for orders often find it very confusing. And I'm wondering how you're going to use the video so that the people who need it get to see it and understand it. Like, how are you going to make it available and accessible?
Do you want to answer that, Eileen, maybe from Cork? Are you okay?
Yeah, well, for me as a travel women's awareness worker, I'm going to use it as a resource when I am going into groups where traveller women are there bringing awareness around domestic and sexual gender-based violence. And as Eileen O'Flynn said there earlier on, that what makes this resource different is that it's done by travellers for travellers, and it's said in a way that traveller women can understand it. So we would go in and we would play the DVD and we would go through the leaflet. We've also done a voiceover for the leaflet as well. And we would talk about domestic violence, bring awareness around it, and we would encourage traveller women to, and this resource would encourage traveller women then to talk about domestic violence and sexual gender-based violence within the group.
That's the question.
So maybe Tessa, could I just jump in there as well?
You can, no problem, yeah.
So I'm not sure if people realise or not, but the initiative with Pavee Point on the DSB front has just come through a midterm review. So we will be looking at building on the work to date. But also just in terms of the question and how this might be used, we would be hoping to have access and use of that video clip and to be able to use it so we can put it up on, for example, on the TUSLA website, and that social work and PPFS programs can use it in their work also when they need to connect up with travellers or when referrals come in, so that it actually allows a resource, if you like, within the statutory sector as well. It's, so that it'll be used across the board, regardless of whether we're looking at work from a voluntary and community sector perspective or a statutory perspective, that we're all kind of working from the same hymn sheet on stuff, to use that term.
Could I just ask a question?
Yeah, okay, is it Margarita?
Margarita, yeah. Just in regards,
after that.
Firstly, I'd like to congratulate you all and well done. It was brilliant.
Thank you.
Just in regards to your information leaflets and your animation, would it be possible to, I think I mentioned it there in the chat, about getting, say, speakers into local organisations, even through Zoom session, to get, say, the staff members up to date with the information that you've launched this morning?
Yeah, so what you're requesting, like, for people to go in and maybe deliver some training around the area of domestic and sexual violence. So as ourselves in the Violence Against Women programme, we work with local traveller organisations, and that's part of the programme's work, is to go out to traveller organisations and to deliver training around violence against women programme. So maybe contact the programme and maybe to drop an email, and we can work with you from there with that. That's no problem.
Thanks very much, Tessa.
The next guest speaker, the question is from Mary McDermott, is it? Yeah. And you're on mute. Oh, yeah. That's great.
Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Tessa. Thanks so much. This was a really powerful, the leaflet and the animation. First, to let you know, we will put this up on our own website. We'll circulate it all, and we will also, put it out to our members and ask them where they have websites to put it up and circulate this as much as possible. It's really powerful, and I hope I'm not taking from this in any way by saying this is actually useful for every woman, because the access to justice is an absolute bloody nightmare. Sometimes nobody knows one way or the other sometimes how to go about it, and Daniel was brilliant there in just going through the pathways, being really clear about what the actual policy is, regardless of if it falls in certain spots. We know that the guards really are actually working to address this very seriously. But I have a question for Senator Flynn, if she had a moment. I really,
Eileen is gone, actually.
I really welcomed your speech, Senator Flynn, and I just wondered if you talk a little bit about this, the way you get caught in a catch-22. So in other words, the racist stereotypes that are around traveller culture and domestic violence can prevent women from coming forward. And that's a very difficult position, and that the racist stereotypes around domestic violence and that it's more prevalent in traveller culture than in other cultures, or indeed any ethnic minorities, or indeed any vulnerable community. For example, sometimes the LGBT community also has the same difficulty. So just the way in which you can get trapped, I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
No, it does. Is Eileen there, or is Eileen?
Yeah. No,
Eileen is gone.
Okay.
Oh, is she there?
No, actually, I'm not gone.
I thought you put in a note there to say you were gone or something.
No. It's actually so important to stay,
Thanks, Eileen.
Look, I think an awful lot we talk about intersectionality, that we can't just look at traveller women and see just the inequalities that women suffer in general. Even when we even look at quotas for women in employment, if we look at all the work the civil assemblies doing now, it's really important that we value traveller culture in trying to get women away from domestic violence services and to use services. And what we would always say is meet the woman where she's at. It's not your place, or it's not services place to judge women because of their circumstances. And when you're living in an abusive situation, it's very difficult. And again, not having the opportunities to being able to work, not even knowing where these services are. And I don't mean to kind of put a spanner in the water here this morning, but I've seen experience here in Ballyfermot where I've worked with women, where women have been barred from refuges because one of their kids had ADHD, and it's very distraught to even see that there's one rule for people from the general population and another rule for traveller women. And I have to credit the work of Pavee Point and other local organisations and national organisations in highlighting the need for services to include traveller women. And unfortunately, we're trying our best as NGOs, as civil society, to break down those barriers and those stereotypes that we see towards traveller women. And I think it's going to take another few years before traveller women have fully equality of opportunity within Irish society. Let that be accommodation, employment, services. And, obviously traveller women organisations and services need to be invested in and need to be supported at a national level by other women's movements and stuff in Ireland. And I think that's a step in the right direction.
Thanks, Eileen, for that response. Maria Joyce, I think, has her hand up with a question.
Yeah, actually not so much a question as just to say well done and congratulations on the launch here today, and well done to all involved in the planning of it and the making it happen, in terms of yourself, Tessa, Laura and others, and on the launch itself, and all of the contributions, raising really important issues in terms of trying to reinforce protections and rights in terms of for women and access to these legal protections. But I suppose I do have one question just for Detective Garda Daniel Beckett, and I suppose it's in the context of the thousands of calls that weren't responded to in relation to domestic violence or gender-based violence calls. And I'm just wondering, in the investigation of that, are they looking at who were kind of recipients of those calls? Like, I mean, you know, who has been impacted on most in terms of women? And I suppose I'm thinking in the context of, you know, some breakdown or analysis of those calls in relation to ethnic minority women or other marginalised groups of women. Is there going to be any sense of that kind of analysis in the investigation? And I suppose then, what kind of thought is being put into measures to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Hi, Maria. Thanks for your question, and it's a very fair question in light of what's been reported in the media. I can honestly say that I can't answer that. I'm not part of that investigation. That investigation has been run independent, and it's within the organisation, but it's been run aside from anything that we do. And it wouldn't be fair of me to comment on anything. I would hope that it is as thorough as I would expect it to be, and that the answers will be as transparent as they should be. But I cannot give any insight into it and where it's going at the moment, and I apologise for that. But given that I've had no input in it or involvement in it, I'm not trying to deflect. It's a very fair question, but I can't answer something that I have no knowledge of, and I apologise for that.
Okay, just before we wrap up, I think it was a very important point that Maria did bring up, and it should be, I think, continue our discussion as well. I think we need to get a hold of that certain department in and maybe ask these questions. I think that's very important and valid point, Maria, to bring up this morning. But just before we move on and wrap up, has anybody got any other question that they want to say, or any more comments before we wrap up this morning? Or forever hold your breath. I'm going to miss.
Hi, I don't know if you can see me. I wasn't able to do the yellow hand thing. I couldn't find it on the screen.
Okay, that's great.
I'm the court support worker in Coonsair Women's Refuge in Clonmel.
Okay.
And I'd just like to say, fantastic video clip. And I think somebody else mentioned it already, that it can actually be used for any woman accessing the services, because I suppose it's a minefield. There's no point in saying it isn't, it is. And it's very difficult for all women who, I suppose, when they get to that point, are traumatized. And then you're going in and it's another language altogether. So I just like to, I suppose, add to what is there already. In our experience, even going down to the courthouse for that initial, you know, putting in the order is hard. Finding the language for any woman to use and to put down on a sheet of paper is hard, because it's a story you're telling, and for the benefit of the court, we need to get it into a paragraph, you know, rather than 6 pages. So I suppose from my role, I would support you even going down doing that, even prior to going in, you know, that you can explain your story and we can, you know, help the woman to put the words on it, because sometimes it's hard to find the words, particularly for coercive control, to try and explain it. So I suppose it would be of a great benefit to any woman to sit with somebody first and then begin the process, and we can support the whole way through it. So I'd just like to add that.
Thanks very much for that. So I suppose as time is ticking on now, it's nearly 11:30 and we're coming to the end of our launch of our animation and leaflet. So firstly, I think it's important that we thank the funders, as I said at the beginning, our partners, the Traveller Women Awareness Workers, but ye as people who came to our launch here this morning to promote this leaflet and resources. Some in the question box, people are asking, is the leaflet and the animation available? The answer is yes. It's going to be on the Pavee website later today. We will also share it through email if people needs it. Also, as you're aware, this launch was recorded and it's also going to be available on YouTube. So please feel free to let people know who couldn't attend it, and it'll be on YouTube. And we also encourage people to share these resources. And as people said, it is for the traveller community, but it also can be used within other communities. And as I say, as my final note, if any leaflet or animation helps a person get out of a situation or gives them some simple advice, please feel free to share. So again, just thank you all for coming, and I hope to see people within the future. And as anybody wants to go on our website from traveller organisations, or if any inquiries to make from services, please contact us. And as Margarita asked as well, maybe in the future also we can do some training with yourselves. So thank everybody, and thank you for coming, and goodbye.
Bye. Thanks everyone.